Professor Garcia is an associate professor at Colorado Law, where she teaches several intellectual property courses, many of which I've had the privilege of taking. She's also the director of the content initiative at Silicon Flatiron, and she joins us today with Andy Sturt. Andy is a PhD student in journalism, studies with a special research interest in audio ethnographic digital storytelling, bit of a mouthful, through social media, specifically Instagram, as an emerging new lens of journalism. They will join us today to discuss the role of influencers and how they bolster or undermine trust in communities. Before they start their conversation, we will play a short video for you, and then Professor Garcia will take over.
Major League Baseball's got, 30 stadiums, right, Ian? And some people make it their life's mission to visit all of them. But one Temple University student doesn't have time for all that. He's getting it done in one semester.
And his professors are cool with it. Fox 29 photojournalist Bill Rohr picks it up from here.
It's not unheard of for a college student to partake in a grueling semester-long project.
It's a lot to squeeze in.
Temple University graduate student Andy Stewart's project may not be as grueling as others, but it's definitely taken him the farthest.
I'm here for a day or two, and then I'm back on the road usually.
The sports tourism and hospitality management major packs up his Toyota Camry every few days and heads to the ballpark. Not just one, but all 30 Major League ballparks in one season. He proposed the idea last spring, and his Temple professors okayed it.
If you're doing something you love, you never work a day in your life.
His goal is to research the fan experience, take in what the ballpark has to offer,
Totally gonna.
and develop a social media presence. This trip is Citi Field for a New York Mets game.
There's been nights where I've met random people and I've stayed with them. I have stayed with friends and family when possible. Some nights I'm in a Red Roof Inn, some nights I'm in a Sheraton. It all depends on what's available.
And he makes friends wherever he can.
There's not going to be another point in his life where he's going to be able to just stop and travel around the world.
Most of Andy's journey lives on Instagram.
So many things I want to share.
Each post has his favorite photos from the day.
I usually have to make them into a little bit of a collage.
His account has gained a lot of attention. So much so, he was interviewed by Fox Sports.
30 stadiums in 29 days.
And spent an inning inside the Spanish broadcast booth for the Texas Rangers game.
School can be fun. You can make whatever you want out of your education.
This may all seem fun, but this trip is not without some close calls. A few flat tires, a couple of speeding tickets, and this, getting lost 6 hours in Joshua Tree National Park.
A lot of people, while they're following me for baseball, just as many people are following me for the travel and the nature stuff.
That is so cool. On this project, Andy learned he loves nature, so he decided to tack on 21 of America's national parks to the project.
People have been really welcoming, and they want to hear about my story, and they want me to sit down and have dinner with their families and, invite me into their homes. I've learned that people are really nice and that people are good.
When all is said and done, Andy's project will take him over 30,000 miles through 34 states. An education that goes far beyond the classroom in New York City. Bill Rohr, Fox 29 News.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that generous introduction, Victoria, and thank you to all of the Silicon Flatirons team for your incredible work in organizing and putting together this conference that I know we all look forward to every year, myself especially. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Andy Sturt. He and I are going to chat amongst ourselves for a bit about the intersections between influencing and trustworthiness when it comes to technology. And then if we get some questions in the chat that people want to throw up there, we'll be happy to address some of those at the end as time permits. To get started, I want to sort of ease the shift from many of the topics that have been coming up in the conference to date, and that will be forthcoming, to say that this is a bit of a shift, right? And I spoke with some of the students in a primer earlier in the week about this, where we're not, in this case, focusing predominantly on the trust and trustworthiness of a particular technology, or even of the persons behind that technology who are making certain governance decisions. here, as we move into the new and wacky world of influencers with Andy, we're going to really talk about the trust and trustworthiness of the individuals, right? Of the users of the technology in this case, where Andy is a user of Instagram's platform, and the trust and trustworthiness for other users of that platform vis-a-vis Andy is really twofold. How they feel about and regard the platform and its governance decisions, meaning vis-a-vis Instagram, and how they feel and regard their relationship, such as it were, vis-a-vis Andy. So to get started, just to give us a little more background, we got some pretty good background in that video there, but to answer some of the obvious preliminary questions, can you tell us a bit about how you got started as an influencer? Was this something you intentionally set out to do, or was it a fluke where you were just, putting these things up on Instagram as one does and found yourself suddenly with lots of interest?
So actually, I was getting my master's degree in sport business marketing at Temple University. And full disclosure, I hated Philadelphia, so I didn't want to be there in the summer. So I was thinking, how can I get out of the summer, like get out of being here and plan a project? And then it just clicked, like, I'm going to go check out every Major League Baseball stadium on a road trip, and I'm going to write about fan experience. And that was my master's project in short. And one of the components of it was that I was going to blog on andysaidwhat.com. I don't really blog there anymore, but it's got over 1.5 million hits. And I was going to create a social media presence. So I downloaded Instagram for the first time the day before I left on my trip. So like I had like 40 followers when it started. And my whole thought process was, as a baseball fan, like this is like the dream project. Like people wait until they retire and then they buy an RV and they go on a road trip to every Major League Baseball stadium. It's like the dream for any baseball fan. So I was thinking to myself, I'd be interested in seeing someone do this, and I'm going to do it on Instagram. And it just kind of took off. Like it went slow at first. And I left from Philadelphia. I drove to my parents' house in Chicago to drop off my dogs. The first game I saw was a Chicago Cubs game. And then from there, I went to St. Louis, Denver, and up to California. By the time I got to California, I had over 15,000 followers. And I mean, I was just like experimenting and seeing what would, like, everything I did was like, it was different because there was no pressure at that time. Like I didn't have this big following and I could do whatever I wanted. But as time went on and like the followers increased and I started getting national and international media attention, it just kind of blew up. So it was totally a fluke that it happened. But yeah, I mean, yeah, does that answer?
That's a pretty impressive fluke. So as this following grew, as you find yourself on the road, you're hitting up stadium after stadium, you see the numbers growing. What did that do to your persona, at least as it exists on Instagram? Did anything change, whether it's your perspective or your focus, your time commitment to the project? What changed with the growth of your following?
Oh gosh, everything. So, whatever I posted at one time didn't matter. But once I had 20,000 followers and my university viewing that, like it started as a project, but then all of a sudden I had all these key stakeholders in me because I had such a large audience that people who were like people and companies and schools that were just a part of the project. Like I was, all of a sudden they thought that they could control what I said and what I did and wanted to basically, at one point, Temple University told me they only wanted me to post positive things. So I wasn't, if I had a negative experience at a stadium, I wasn't supposed to post that because one of the main things for the sport business program is placing interns. So they were thinking about, I have this huge following. If I say something negative about the Cleveland Indians, which did happen, the Cleveland Indians might not take interns of theirs. So they all of a sudden thought that they had more control over what I could say, which led to a bunch of like inner demons for me with authenticity stuff. And then sponsors wanted me to say stuff. And I've always been very careful about who I'll take money from, like what I'll say in posts. I never want to like promote something that I wouldn't buy, or I never want to wear something that I wouldn't wear for money. So like I was turning down offers right and left, but then the ones that I was taking also thought that they had some say in what I did. So like I like to take pictures of my butt in a waterfall, right? And it became a thing where,
As one does, sure.
as one does, it became a thing where people were saying to me, you can't keep posting pictures of your ass in a waterfall. And I'm like, this is my account. Like, why does it matter? And it's like, well, we're not going to give you money. And I'm like, okay, I don't want your money. So
right. So that's an interesting point that I think a lot of an inflection point, if you will, that I think a lot of influencers get to, and that I want to talk about. Obviously, a focus of this conference that we're participating in today is trust, and there's been a lot of commentary about the central importance of trust and trustworthiness and authenticity in the world of influencer and influencer advertising. And in fact, I think it's pretty well accepted now that what makes influencer advertising so attractive to brands and marketers is that users, for the most part, followers of these people, view them as a more authentic voice, right? So that if Kim Kardashian says that a particular lipstick is the one she likes, then that must be a great lipstick. There is a dissenting view that, in fact, nothing that Kim Kardashian says she likes, she actually likes, that she's clearly just shilling for all of these companies. And so there has begun to be a little bit of a rift, a little divide between sort of the influencers who hold true to, the brands and values that they had coming into this, and those who maybe are giving in a bit more to these pressures that you mentioned about, in sponsors and endorsers and other stakeholders, right? You're wearing a Temple shirt in a lot of that video we watched at the opening. And so you can understand their feeling that you're affiliated. Can you talk a little bit about, why you think people follow you, what you think you offer them, and what role this notion of building trust and authenticity with your followers means to you?
Well, first, to be fully authentic, I smoke. So I'm going to smoke during this interview in the interest of authenticity.
I will go on record as saying Silicon Flatirons does not condone nor endorse this behavior.
And that is an authentic statement from Silicon Flatirons. So I think people follow me because I'm authentic. It's weird for me right now because it's hard for me to post from an authentic space. Since the baseball thing, I've veered more towards travel in general. I don't really focus much of my research or my adventures on baseball. Now it's more about going to national parks and going like globe trotting internationally. So I think a lot of the people I follow are people that I meet places, and they're just fascinated by my story. It's a weird thing because I in the last year and a half, I haven't really posted much, especially this summer, because again, I'm a travel based account, and I drove through, I think, 10 states this summer and went to like 7 national parks. It didn't feel right to post stuff. It didn't feel right.
Right, so I was going to ask about that, right? We're in the middle of a global pandemic and you're a travel influencer. So what role does authenticity play there? What were your worries about posting?
Well, first, I didn't want to be attacked by anyone saying it's so irresponsible of you for traveling. Then I was also thinking that I have a couple thousand followers from the University of Colorado, that probably 500 former students of mine from classes I've either taught or TA'd. And I was thinking to myself that it's not responsible of me to be on there posting these pictures of me going to all these places, which is basically me endorsing traveling during a pandemic. And on like a personal perspective, I mean, I know people who have died from COVID. I've had friends that have lost jobs and are experiencing homelessness and stuff. It didn't feel like the proper thing for me to be glorifying these beautiful places and these fun things that I'm doing while everyone in the world's struggling.
Right. So I note there that another bit of this comes up, which is identifiability, right? If people are struggling, either, trying to figure out where they're going to live or how they're going to eat, or dealing with the loss of loved ones, that someone who's cavorting around, taking pictures of their backsides and waterfalls might not be identifiable, right? How important is that? And I know when we sort of pre-chatted the other day, I raised that example, which I'll fill the audience in on here, on Twitter, where I learned her last name is actually pronounced Teigen, not Teigen. Chrissy Teigen, John Legend's wife and supermodel in her own right, had posted something about buying a $13,000 bottle of wine, and got a lot of backlash because people were like, well, not only is that like, ridiculous, but you're posting this at a time when lots of people are suffering financially and other hardships, etc. And her retort, which, is an argument, was, well, you're not following me because I'm like you, right? You're following me for this fantasy or this sort of different view on the world. What do you think about that? Like, how important is identifiability for users, and how does that tie into this trust that you build with your followers?
I think identifiability is very important, actually. So I basically, whenever I travel throughout the United States, I have followers that I've engaged with, and I'm one of those people that if you send me a direct message on Instagram, as long as it's not like something perverse, I'm probably going to respond to you. So like, one of my favorite stories to tell is when I started this whole baseball road trip, I got a message from someone that wanted to start a blog about Chicago Cubs baseball. And I was driving 1,000 miles that day. So I was like, you know what? Give me a call. Like, call me while I'm in the car. We'll talk. So we talked for an hour, and then she built her own blog. Her name's Victoria. She's in Arizona. She built her own blog. And about a year and a half later, I was in Arizona at the Innings Festival, which is like a spring training. It's kind of like, it's thrown by Lollapalooza people. And it's a spring training thing where they have music and baseball stars. So it was like the perfect merger of like my interest, right? And I posted a picture of myself at the Innings Festival, and I get a message from her that was like, hey, I am in Arizona. I've always wanted to meet you. You've been very important in my life. You helped me develop this blog. And I was like, well, I'm here another day. And she was like, oh, cool. I'm going to the Innings Festival today. And I was like, cool, we'll meet up there. And this was an even more unique story because I in an Uber, and the Uber driver, I had them stop at In-N-Out Burger. And so I'm messaging her while we're in the line at In-N-Out Burger. And I'm like, yeah, I'm at In-N-Out Burger right now. And she was like, no way, which one? So I asked the Uber driver, he told me where I was. I told her, and she's like, I'm at In-N-Out Burger right now. She was 4 cars ahead of me in the drive-through line. And so like, I got out of the car, and like, she ran up to me and gave me a hug and started crying and was like, you have no idea how much you've influenced my life. And like, I made a lifelong friend out of it. So I think the identifiability thing's a big thing. And that's also why I have trouble posting stuff now, is because it's hard to identify with people. I'm a PhD student, and I'm in the middle of my dissertation prospectus and my comprehensive exams right now. So it's hard to identify with anyone that's not in that world. And I don't have the time commitment that it would take. But I also want to go back to a question you asked about me, what changed? Back in the day, it would take me 5 minutes to post. I wouldn't really think about what I was posting. Now, if I want to post something, it takes 2 hours because I have to literally craft everything I'm going to say. I have to go back and respond to comments on my last picture because it creates more engagement on things. I have to think about anything I do, really. I mean, it's just very much a lot more work, a lot more work.
I can imagine, right? So your platform of choice is Instagram, right? That's where you built your following and where you maintain your following. How much, if at all, do you think your behavior on the platform, the way that you engage with your followers, any disclosures you make, which we'll get to momentarily, we're going to leave a few minutes here for Q&A. How much do you think, if at all, that stems from the platform's rules, right? The terms of service for users and influencers on Instagram. I assume you've read them thoroughly and you are familiar with all of the regulations around the maintenance of your account.
I mean, I've read the business stuff. I've read the stuff that could make me money, but I've never engaged with it. I prefer Instagram because it's a visual platform. I think a lot of the stuff that I do, pictures are better than any description I could give. And so I think I don't really know how to answer that question. But I'll say this. I don't think that my content is, I think that there's only a couple platforms that it would transfer over to. I think that Twitter is difficult. I mean, for reference, I think on Twitter, I have like under 1,000 followers, and on Instagram, I have over 70,000 followers. But again, like to be on Twitter, like that's going to take hours of commitment a day. I think the most transferable my content would be is to YouTube. But then I don't have the technical savvy to cut videos and stuff like that. So like one of the questions you gave me in the outline of these questions was, do I think that influencing is a young person's game? And I do, because I'm almost 40 years old, and I think 74% of my followers are under my age, and under 25 is like 60%. So I think that finding ways to relate and be identifiable with a crowd that's such a different life from me is gotten more challenging as I've gotten a bigger increased following. And I have to think about everything I do in another perspective of, in a year, I'm going to be looking for a tenure track job. So I have to think about anything I post everywhere from that perspective, which also takes away some of the authenticity.
Right, right. So in our last few minutes together, I want to shift to include some of the questions that have been popping up in the Q&A from our audience. To start with, you've explained that you're pretty picky when it comes to sponsorships and endorsements, focusing on things that you actually endorse and sponsor. When you have agreed, and maybe you can, give us an example, what sorts of disclosures do you give? Do you add particular hashtags? And what sort of level of transparency about sponsorships generally do you try to adhere to vis-a-vis your followers?
I mean, I never explicitly have said that I'm being sponsored by anyone. So Chicago White Sox used to send me a bunch of stuff to wear in pictures. And it was just like, I'm a Sox fan. So they're giving me free swag in order to wear it because baseball's my thing. So I was totally cool with it. And I would tag them, like if I was I'm wearing a Bears shirt right now. So like I would tag the White Sox in every shirt I wore. And I would tag them in every baseball post I did because they're a baseball team, right? In the past 2 months, I've gotten offered a couple $1,000s from alcohol companies. And I don't drink. I mean, I drink socially maybe once every 3 months, but it never, as much as I could use a couple $1,000s, I don't feel right advertising alcohol. And that again goes back to having a bunch of undergraduate students that follow me, like being like, hey, go get drunk. I support this because it's a local Colorado company. I can't do that. Now, if it was marijuana, I might be willing to do it because I love me some marijuana. We're in Colorado, right? Silicon Flatirons does not endorse this. But and I've gotten offered from a Boulder dispensary to do something with them, but I really wanted to do it because I was like, free weed, awesome. But I can't do that because again, I'm going to be looking for a job in a year, and marijuana is not legal everywhere like it is here. So I didn't want to put that on that space because I was thinking, what if I apply somewhere where marijuana is illegal and that gets me disqualified from the job, even though I have everything else that qualifies me.
Right. Now, I imagine as part of your sort of staying up on the world, you follow other influencers, presumably some other travel influencers even. In your experience with platforms like Instagram, how do you feel about the transparency that those platforms have when it comes to things like engagement, even the metrics that they provide you? Whether some platforms, Instagram could do this in some cases, have promoted posts, right, or highlighted accounts. Is that something that you feel like is pretty straightforward and everyone has a chance at it, or does it seem to you rather non-transparent? What do you think about the disclosures generally?
There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that people don't know. So when you ask me if I followed other influencers, yes, I do. Since I haven't been very active the last year and a half, I don't really communicate with as many of them as I used to, but I told you about this. We had engagement groups that there was like 150 people in, that you had to have a minimum of 25,000 followers to be invited to this elite engagement group. And every time
the audience, these are follower engagement groups, right? For followers, influencers, influencer engagement groups for them to get together and trade secrets.
Right. And like, so every time I would post, I'd go in this WhatsApp chat that would blow up my phone every day. And I would be like, new post, please comment and like. And then when you get all these people commenting that have hundreds of thousands of followers, there's a crossover. So their followers notice that they're posting on my stuff. They notice me posting on their stuff. And we get a crossover of influencer influencer engagement. Plus it raises your notoriety in the I'm blanking on the thing, but the algorithms, yes, algorithms. The more that you comment on these other Instagram followers posts, then it is more likely to put you into suggested a similar account. And
popularity breeds popularity, certainly.
Right.
How will we know if something's cool? Because someone will tell us that it's cool.
Exactly.
Right. That's really fascinating. Last question here as we wrap up, so we don't bleed too far into the next thing. And I'll just ask you, where do you see influencing going in the next year, 2 years, 5 years? What do you think's next?
I honestly don't know. I never thought I'd be an influencer. As I mentioned, it was kind of a fluke. I've just kind of taken it with rolled with it. I think that influencing is just like, everyone wants to do it, but they never realize how much work it takes. And I think that you have to be like a full-time influencer is a full-time job, because there's so much that goes into it that I think it's very much a young person's game. I think that you're not going to see many people at 40 years old actively engaged in influencing, unless they're like some television star or have something else going, and that's like a component of their job. I think that the future is scary a little bit, because I just sometimes I wish that I could go back to before there was the internet, because life would have been so much easier. I have no idea what the future holds. I look forward to it and hopefully being a small part of it.
Great. Well, thank you again for your time and your insights today, Andy. Everyone, please join me in thanking Andy Sturt for his time, and please stick around and enjoy the rest of the conference. Take care.
Thank you very much.